We are speaking with a songwriter producer, Desmond Child. Desmond, an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. And just real quick before you say hello, thank you, by the way, for all these songs and all this music. It has been an absolute soundtrack to my life and pretty much everybody's life who's going to be listening to this today.
Oh, well, I don't know how to do anything else.
But it is amazing. So let me sort of start at the beginning because the list of songs that you've written and the artist is incredible, and we will get to that. But where does this come from in terms of getting into songwriting and making it a profession? Are you sort of sitting in the back of the class at 12 years old, doodling in your notebook, and at some point you go, "Hey, I've got these tunes going on. I've got," or do you sort of get into Desmond Child and Rouge, and somebody says, "Well, it's great that you have a band, but now you got to write some songs." Was it inspiration or perspiration to get to this point?
My mother was a songwriter, and she was Cuban, so she wrote a style of music called bolero. And I grew up at her feet. She was always writing a song. So I didn't know that people didn't write songs. So sensing her mood being happy, I could hear that the music was kind of joyful, and when she was sad, which was most of the time, they were sad, melancholy songs. And as soon as I could stand up and say something, I would be just standing there, right, kind of holding myself up on the piano bench and just looking up at her, and then she would be trying to write something, and then I'd make suggestions. So that's where it started.
So, all right. So, talk to me about that then. So your mom was doing it, but did she actually give you lessons and have you write stuff out and correct it like a school teacher? Or was it just really like you said, she was writing stuff and you'd say, "Hey, Mom, by the way, if you use this word, it would sound better."
Well, my mother played piano and guitar by ear, and she was a poet, and her lyrics were incredible, and her poetry is stunning, and so she was a true artist. So it wasn't quite like that, and I grew up in a family where everybody did something. I had other aunts that wrote songs, and my uncles. One was a percussionist at the Tropicana nightclub in Havana, Cuba, and my other uncle started a singing group, sort of like the Latin Four Seasons, called Los Bucaneros, and he danced and he sang, and they sang in four-part harmony. And so this was going on in the 1950s. And so I was born in Gainesville, Florida, on a dairy ranch, but we always were going into Havana, and there was always music going on. So it wasn't like a formal kind of thing. And then, after the Cuban Revolution, my family fell on hard times, and I lived in those same projects. They shot the movie Moonlight, and my mom would always, on the weekends, she'd always have all of her poet and songwriter friends, and they'd be singing songs that later became classics, in the 60s. And she started the first organization of songwriters, of Cuban songwriters in exile. And so, she was always an activist for songwriters' rights. So I sort of have, completely followed in her footsteps. When she passed away in 2012, I co-founded the Latin Songwriters Hall of Fame with Rudy Perez. And Rudy is one of the greatest, Latin songwriters and producers. And we're on our 7th year. And that kind of came out of, after I was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame, I realized I was only the third person of Hispanic heritage to ever be inducted. It was Jovi and Ernesto Lecuona and me. And so I just felt an imperative that, there are thousands of incredible songwriters of every Latin country, and Portugal and Brazil, and, of so many genres. And the music of Latin America goes back even further than America's. I mean, the missionaries were writing songs and poems when they got there in the 400 years ago.
Yeah.
on the little sides of the of their Bibles. So, I've been very much involved in, in promoting songwriters' rights. I'm on the board of ASCAP, and I, never stop creating. It just never stops, and I never stop fighting for songwriters.
Well, in fact, okay, I was going to ask you some other stuff, but let's take that up right now. Apple and Spotify are sort of exchanging jabs at each other. You see artists like Peter Frampton and others post about, hey, I have, X million amount of spins. Here's my 17.99. Is that the similar circumstance for songwriters? Do streams and views on YouTube and all that add up to a similar revenue stream as in the past, as in the 80s and 90s and so on? Or are you also in this sort of new frontier where you go, hey, wait a minute, Living on a Prayer got 4 million spins last month, and I got $40 to show for it. I mean, what's it like
Well,
currently?
let's just start with Living on a Prayer. Last
Right.
year, it received 500 million streams between Pandora and Spotify. That's not counting Tidal or any other kind of way that people are downloading the song. And my take-home pay was $6,000 for 500 million.
For
So
half a
I don't
billion.
think, so I don't think that that's right. And I think that now that we have the Music Modernization Act in place, it's supposed to lift our royalties by 44%, which means instead of 6,000, I'll be getting 10,000 for 500 million streams. Yay! I don't think that gets my kids through, college.
It doesn't. Okay, so let me ask you this, because I'm in Canada, I'm in Montreal, and we've always sort of suggested that the the Canadian music rights, was fairer, and our way was fairer, and European. So is that the proper perception? Is this a specifically United States issue? Is this a global issue, or are there some markets like Europe or like Canada or Japan where they treat you better, or are you sort of like, I'm getting $6,000 no matter where I go?
No, that's my global take-home pay.
Okay. Wow.
So hello. So the thing is, on the internet and all. I mean, it is global. I mean, people are downloading and streaming all over the world simultaneously. It doesn't quite work like that. I mean, there are other or income streams that are, people that, in certain territories, like the producer, the singers, the musicians, people that worked on the record, they're actually getting a little tiny piece of something, and we don't have that here in the United States yet, because there was strong lobbying, from I guess, different forces. They didn't want to have to pay more for the music by having to include all these other people. So we don't get paid from them, and we don't pay them. I mean, but you can imagine the imbalance. American music is so much more played all over the world than any other kind of music. So the imbalance is like we're not getting what was coming to us. And, now we're at a place where maybe it's a start. It's great. It's a start. But it's so far from what it is. I mean, the audio owners, the people that own the recordings, they make like 15 times more than we do. And it's still not even good enough, even for them. You know what I'm saying? And they make 15 times more because, somehow in the shuffle of the dice, the songwriters and the publishers got the, short end of the stick. And we need to try to rectify that. If you go to license a song for a film or anything like that, or commercial, it's 50-50. Why shouldn't that 50-50 expression go, all the way around every which way you play a song?
Yeah, no, I agree about
and
that.
And I'm speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for organizations I'm a part of. I'm wearing the Desmond Child hat, not the ASCAP hat or any other kind of hat. I'm just saying, from me.
Yeah, and It's funny because the artist always, it's always sort of good to be the songwriter in a band. That seems to be the best place to go. Now, let me quickly get into a little bit of song. Actually, you know what? No, let me get over to the story of Roman and Nero, the story of Roman and Nero, which came out 2013. It is the story of your family and the surrogate and your two children. It is an incredibly loving story. Talk to me about the desire to put that out and let people have that private look into your life, because you could certainly just be Desmond and be the family and live happily ever after. Why was it important for you and the family to say, hey, this is our story and it's important for you to understand it, Joe Q public?
Well,
And it's a great story, by the way.
I think that we were kind of mavericks in a way, as far as being two gay men wanting to have our own biological children. There are very few couples that had tried, in vitro fertilization. It was just at the very beginning. I think we were like the 60th couple that were born through, the doctor that we used. Or no, actually through Growing Generations, we were the 60th couple that came to them for help, because there was a lot involved, legal help, and in terms of, dealing with our surrogate mom in a fair way and making sure that she was taken care of, and and that it was all completely above board. The thing was that my husband and I, right now we're celebrating our 30th year together. But after we'd built like 5 different houses and had like many generations of bulldogs, we decided we wanted to start a family of our own. And I was in my late 40s at the time. My husband was in his late 30s, and we just did the research, but we didn't even know where to begin. So we went to a special meditation conference in India with Deepak Chopra. And there we met Angela Whitaker and her mom, Ruby, who were there from the United States. And there was something that we were just drawn to her and her mom. And we sat together and we meditated together. We took the bus together. We flew on the planes together. We did everything together. And I'm just like, looking at this woman, she's so full of life and exuded such a beautiful energy. And I'm looking at her and I said, and she said, why are you looking at me like that? I said, because you're going to have my kid. And she was like, ooh, get away. No, what are you talking about? And, later on, when we got back to the States, she asked to see me because she was actually from Nashville. And, we met for breakfast, and she said, you know what, I wanted to tell you this. After you said that, I went back to my room and I had a very intense dream that I had your child. And she wasn't expecting 2. And she says, that's why I think I'm meant to do this. And Deepak Chopra says, it is almost biblical, as like, having this dream. And so it was a fantastic journey. They are 9/11 babies because they were conceived on September 7th, 2001. And we found out like the 13th or 14th that she was going to have twins. And then later on we found out they were going to be boys. And so, we documented every step along the way, and so did she with her cell phone, because we felt it was important that we show people in the world that, first of all, that gay people are not infertile. You know what I'm saying? My own father thought I was infertile because he thought I didn't have enough testosterone to have a fertile sperm.
Right.
He was Hungarian, very old school. What, you have babies? It's like, yes. And I think there's a lot of ignorance out there about. And he was a smart man. He really thought that gay men were like eunuchs or something in the castle. And so we showed the world how we did it. And of course, there are many ways to make a family, adopting and there's, artificial insemination, in vitro, or, putting families together from different, kind of unions and things like that. But we have gotten so many letters after our documentary came out of people that showed the film to their families because they didn't even know how to tell them that they were even gay. I mean, some people just said, "I want you to see this," and played our film and then said, "Well, I'm gay." Because it showed that we also can have, families and full of love, and that our children, have souls, and that they're just like every other child that's ever born. And our children are lucky because they have two loving parents that, have given up everything for them. And that's not always the case out there. So many children are left unadopted and then thrown out into the street, and that's very upsetting. So I hope those people that are out there that are pro-life, because, we are pro-life, of our children, that they go out there and adopt and take, participate. Otherwise, get out of people's lives of how, they have or decide not to have children. I mean, it's a very, very big issue. But we we are so happy. Our sons are now visiting colleges, so it's kind of painful to go to all these incredible colleges and think, oh, my sons are going to be leaving together because they're twins all at the same time. We're going to be empty nesting very hard in about another year.
Yeah, and of course, with $6,000 coming in, you'll have to get sort of a state college, I would think. No, I'm kidding. But okay, before we move on to the songwriting and the different songs here, before the film actually came out and as you were putting it together, was there any fear that there was going to be some kind of backlash or that some artist wouldn't work with you, or is that so old school thinking that no, nobody's going to care. We're going to make a loving movie and people are going to. Was there any reticence, or was it like, nah, listen, it's we're in the 2000s, nobody cares. Let's just get it out, and you know what I mean?
We never got hate mail. We never got.
Nor should you.
We never got anything, and people that were dragged there that was very conservative left teary-eyed, and so many people like we joined the travel soccer and all that, and most of the parents that were in that, they were all Republicans and all that. They got to know us, and we're on the sidelines cheering and screaming for our kids, and so many of them came up to me and they said, "You know what? I'd never met a gay person before, and you've changed my heart and you've changed my mind."
So very, very positive. Yeah, and I is it, by the way, on a streaming service? Because I watched sort of clips here.
It's on Amazon and iTunes. And if you go to our website, which is tothedocumentary.com, you can see a little trailer and stuff. And we also, when our film came out, the night before we actually got married in Central Park, and our sons were the best men. So we made a special little side movie about our wedding, which is fun.
That's great. In fact, Steve Thompson, the great producer, was telling me this afternoon that you had attended his wedding and he wanted to wish you well. Real quick here, songwriting. I was talking to Jim Valance the other day and sort of asking him what his sort of secret sauce was for putting together a song. And he said, you have to have a title first and work from there. And then I read a story about you in Rolling Stone, and they sort of said, what's your trick? And it says, you have to have a title first and work from there. Talk to me about that, because it seems that some of the two greatest songwriters, or two exceptionally great songwriters, have this same trick. Is that sort of the genesis of every song? It's okay, First, we come up with Living on a Prayer, and then we come up to how to get a narrative to fit it. Talk to me about sort of the start of writing a song.
Well, I worked for 2 years with one of the most brilliant songwriters of all time, Bob Crew, who wrote and produced songs with the Four Seasons and many other, he has many other hits like Lady Marmalade and, Mitch Ryder, Detroit Wheels, all these things that he did. I mean, his first hit was when he was 18, Silhouettes on the Shade. And that was like 1948 or something. I don't know what it was, but it was back in the day. And so by the time he met me, he was already kind of retired from music, and he was painting and sculpting, but he decided to take me under his wing because I'm a Scorpio. And, Bob Gaudio, his co-writer on the Four Seasons, was also a Scorpio. And also Kenny Nolan, who wrote Lady Marmalade, he's a Scorpio. He would only work with Scorpios. And so that was my passage in. And for 2 years, I would meet him in a little French cafe called the Coq au Vin that was across the street from this kind of modern building where he had rented just a studio apartment. It had one room and a kitchen and a bathroom. That was it. No bedrooms, nothing. And, that's where he would write. He had his own apartment separate that had gorgeous artwork and all of that. But this room had nothing on the walls, had like a beige carpet, black piano, hard black bench, a stool with arms, a comfortable stool with arms for him, and a stack of empty, yellow pads. And then he would go in the kitchen and he would be sharpening the pencils. And we'd sit there, and for 2 years, we'd meet at Coq au Vin at noon, and then by 1, we would be upstairs sitting ready to write a song. By 6 o'clock, he would run away to his meetings and, things that he was doing. And we did that 5 days a week, and we finished 38 songs. And he's the one that taught me everything about songwriting. Even though I'd already had a hit with Kiss, I Was Made for Lovin' You, and my group Desmond Child And Rouge had a hit, Our Love Is Insane. It was a dance hit. I didn't really know what the hell I was doing. Even though my mother was a songwriter, my mother was kind of like a spontaneous songwriter. Like she would put her hands on the piano, she would start saying what she was feeling and kind of start singing, kind of like I imagine Laura Nyro would do, or Joni Mitchell. On the other hand, Bob wouldn't even let me put my hands on the piano until we had a killer title, or at least know exactly what the song was going to be about. And he would always say, well, you don't open your mouth to speak unless you have something to say. Why should you open your mouth to sing if you don't have something to say? And, before I used to just play chords and kind of mumble, hope that my mumbles would sound like something, and, all of a sudden I'd build something out of nothing. And usually those songs were really bad because, they weren't going, songs don't write themselves. So we would go in there and start writing, and he was very meticulous about the rhymes being clean, at the ends of each, and then the inner rhyming between one line and the next, a lot of alliteration and inner rhyming. And he would go over and over and over a line until it was perfect, and then like the sun would come out. And then when we'd finish a song, he'd make me sit there while he copied it by hand. If he made a mistake, he'd tear up the page no matter where he was and start over again. And then label the little cassette, and everything was completely, perfectly done. And, I make the people I co-write with do the same thing. We sign an information sheet that's, states the splits. We sign it at the bottom. It has to add up to 100%. I'm usually the one typing out all the lyrics, and I number the lyrics, so later on when you're comping, it's easy, or singing, you can say, go to line 8. I want to fix the last word on line 8. And, stuff like that, and always put the copyright. underneath and the PROs and everything, because you may never see those people again that you're writing with. I mean, I wrote a song with Hanson called Weird, and I think Zach was 16, Taylor was 14, and no, Isaac was 16, Taylor was 14, and Zach was 9. And we wrote this amazing song. It's one of my favorite songs. I always perform it when I do shows and in the round and all that. It's called Weird. And I never saw them again until like a couple of years ago. They were at the ASCAP Expo, and they were on stage, and they started playing Weird, and I just sneaked behind them, and I put my hand on Taylor's shoulder, and he looked up, and he went like, wow! It's like we hadn't seen each other since they were little kids. So that's why I always say, get everything tight before everybody scatters to the wind.
And of course, you've mentioned in other interviews that Weird and Bon Jovi's You Want to Make a Memory are these two songs that you absolutely love, and for some reason you think they didn't get a fair shake or they should have been bigger than they were. And I agree with that. So let me ask you about this before we start getting to I Was Made for Love You and Dude Looks Like a Lady and all those great songs. You look at the list: Ricky Martin, Aerosmith, Emotion, Cyndi Lauper, Robin Beck, Meatloaf, Michael Bolton, Vince Neil, Bon Jovi, Ratt, Leanne Rimes. They are not one genre, one style of music. It is all over the map. So when you approach songwriting for these bands, is it sort of one size fits all where you write a song and then they take it to the studio and they add the bells and whistles that make it sound, hard rock or make it sound country, or do you have a different mechanism for, Boyzone and Cher and Ratt and China? Like how do you do it in terms of the different styles?
Well, for the most part, I've been collaborating with the artist ever since I co-wrote I Was Made for Lovin' You with Paul Stanley. And later on, their producer, Vinny Poncia, joined the song in the studio for the, elements that he added. But, I'm with that person. To me, whoever I'm writing with, it's like a sacred circle. Nothing exists except for us in that moment. And so usually I'm taking cues from them, as to, what they're feeling and what they want to be expressing, how they want to express it. And, a title has kind of rhythm onto itself, and that title will kind of generate like the mood of what the song would be about. The first day I met Bon Jovi, I had a title in my back pocket, You Give Love a Bad Name. And, I went to Richie's Sambora's house where he lived with his parents, and I walked in the first floor, and right before the kitchen on the left was his little bedroom. It had like, a Kiss poster, Farrah Fawcett in the red bathing suit. It was like all kinds of rock paraphernalia. The bed was messy. It was crazy. Shoes thrown everywhere. And then I went into the kitchen, and John was on one of those wall phones, those avocado green wall phones, kind of, I imagine, with, Doc McGee on the phone, kind of strategizing their takeover of the music industry. And Richie led me down to this dank kind of, Silence of the Lambs basement where the laundry machine was, and there was a little Formica table with a little keyboard, and there was some amps on buzzing, and some kind of transoms that were like really muddy, and barely light coming in. And finally John came down, and we're fooling around, and then I said, well, I have a title, You Give Love a Bad Name. And John lit up, and he had a song on his previous album called Shot Through the Heart, and he wasn't giving up on Shot Through the Heart, so he said Shot Through the Heart and You To Blame, and then all the three of us says You Give Love a Bad Name, and then high-fived it, the three of us, and that was the beginning of, the chemistry that the three of us had together.
Oh, it's an incredible chemistry.
That's how it went.
Yeah, and it's an incredible. Now, the term song doctor comes up a lot in discussions. Are you sort of a collaborator and a co-writer with the different artists, or does the record company call you in and say, listen, you're working with so and so, they have some songs that are like, we need you to go in there, and is that something that you ascribe to, the fact that I'm a song doctor and I fixed up, or that's not part of your vocabulary? You're a co-writer. Okay.
I very rarely like fix songs. I mean, I'll do it. Many times it's when I'm executive producing a record, I'll just, kind of listen to songs and say, well, look, why don't you put that second verse as the first? It's stronger, and write a new second verse, and forget about that B section. It just goes nowhere. Just exit out, go right to the chorus. I do things like that to help the artist, because the stronger their record is, the better. But, I'm the strongest songs are the ones that, I've written from scratch, and that's what most of them have been. So the song doctor thing, I don't know who came up with that. I think it was like, who knows, like a lot of times the bands I wrote with didn't want to admit that they were collaborating with me. And so then they started saying, well, he's like a song doctor or whatever, and the critics picked up on it because they was like, well, we already wrote the song. He just came in and wrote a couple of words, or something. I think Steven Tyler said that about Dude Looks Like a Lady, which was like, it was so funny because Joe Perry did an autobiography, which he co-wrote with David Ritz, who also has been co-writing my autobiography. And then Steven Tyler did his. And their stories about the origin of Dude Looks Like a Lady were completely wrong. I mean, it's like, Joe says, oh, well, Desmond came in with the title Dude Looks Like a Lady, which I didn't. And then Steven says, oh, well, we had Dude Looks Like a Lady, and then Desmond just like fixed a couple of words here and there. And then, well, we had to give him a piece of the song. And, it was like one of those. But he spent like 4 pages saying that. And he also described me like I look like Juan Valdez with a mustache. I've never worn just a mustache. I mean, I have beards and stuff, and, it's like his image of me was like crazy. And so then a couple of years ago, we were working on a song called Red, White, and You for his country record, and he co-wrote that with one of my writers. And I said, okay, Steven, this is how it went. I walked in, and you guys were working on this reverse guitar, and you were singing Cruisin' for the Ladies. Remember? Oh, right. His book already came out, right? Oh, Cruisin' for the Ladies. Well, yeah, I remember that. And I said, and remember, I told you that I didn't like it? And then you shared that you had gone into a bar with Joe and some roadies and stuff. And I mean, they were all kind of like, could only drink, sparkling water because they were all in, AA or something, in some kind of program. But sitting at the end of the bar was this luscious looking, platinum mullet haired, gorgeous thing with like black nails and like a curvy figure and, porcelain skin. And they were all kind of like drawing straws who was going to go up and say hi, right? And all of a sudden, this gorgeous creature turns on the stool, and it's Vince Neil from Motley Crue. And they were all like, oh, my God, shit. Oh, my God. Are you kidding me? That dude looks like a lady. And Steven kept saying, dude looks like a lady, dude looks like a lady, dude looks like a lady. And he said, well, that's what I first started singing. And then Joe said, oh, but we don't know what that means. I said, hold on a second. Dude looks like a lady, that's a smash title. Because remember, I had been trained by Bob Crewe, who wrote Lady Marmalade, and and all of that inner, tension of opposites. Dude looks like a lady. I mean, it's like has everything going for it. And I talked them into the storyline of a guy, normal, regular, hetero guy that goes into a bar on the shore and, sees this gorgeous blonde up on the stage, then goes back and, she pulls out her gun and tries to blow him away. And then the thing is, in this song, he doesn't run away. He says, "My funky lady, I like it, like it, like it, like that." And the second verse is, "Never judge a book by its cover, or who you gonna love by your lover." And it's like, I mean, it's like predates all this, GLBT rights and everything, the transgender fluid business, by 30 something years. And so that's the story. And then Stephen looks at me and says, "I like your story better than my story." It's like he didn't even remember it. It's like, so it's like, it's so crazy.
That's hilarious.
How different people remember things different ways. And of course, in his story, I barely contributed to the song. But, if you look at those lyrics, walked into a bar on the shore, her picture graced the grime on the door. I could never have come up with that without having written for 2 years with Bob Crew. Voulez-vous coucher avec moi ce soir?
Ce soir. Ben oui, bien oui. Let me ask you this about these bands, because I grew up, or my catalog of music is the 80s, of course, and you've got Aerosmith, Permanent Vacation, and you've got Slippery When Wet, and you've got the Ratt album, and you've got Alice Cooper. You've got all these hard rock bands that you're writing for at that time. Sort of in a 10-year span, you're sort of writing for all the big bands. Kiss is in there. Talk to me a little bit about making sure that you don't write a song that sounds too similar to the band, because you don't want to give Alice Cooper
similar to another band.
Well, I mean, yeah, in a sense, like you look at House of Fire, demoed by Bon Jovi, recorded by Alice Cooper. Was there a point where you're just like, okay, I have to make sure I've got all these hard rock...
No. Okay. Hold on a second. House of Fire I co-wrote with Joan Jett, and then we brought Alice into it.
But Bon Jovi...
Somewhere along the way, before I brought it to Alice, I brought it to Bon Jovi, and I said, I co-wrote this with Joan Jett. But, she just felt it sounded so Bon Jovi. So why don't you guys try to demo it? And they demoed it, and it was like, no, it was not for them. So, so then I brought it to Alice, and then we tweaked it and made it with Alice Cooper lyrics, and, we developed the song, because it really had a kind of stadium, House of Fire. To me, that was very Joan. But somehow she just, it wasn't kind of like her very unique, kind of style, which is kind of like that girl group sound. It didn't have, it was more like kind of like Kiss, like Heaven's on Fire, it kind of had that kind of sing along thing. So that's how that song was born. And then I was surprised to see that in somewhere along the way, that demo of House of Fire ended up on a Bon Jovi compilation of demos or something.
It ended up on the 30th anniversary of not Bad Medicine, New Jersey. That's what it was, the bonus disc.
I know. I think he had forgotten, it was like, well, oh, yeah, I remember that song. I think they had forgotten that they didn't really write it, but it's okay, whatever.
But,
so that's how that particular song was made. But I mean, I just saw Alice Cooper 2 nights ago at Bob Ezrin's birthday party, and people flew in from all over. It was his 70th birthday party, and Alice and I were talking about how we made Trash, and he and I sat there and we co-wrote every song together, and then I would bring in these bits and pieces from other collaborations, but Trash has its sound of its own. He says when he goes on a stage and he starts playing Poison, the people just go crazy as soon as they hear the first chords and the kind of weird dissonant guitar lick, and so I'm like, it's so wonderful because it's the 30th anniversary of the release of Trash this year.
There better be a deluxe edition, because that's one of my all-time favorites. Spark in the Dark, Bed of Nails, I'm Your Gun. I mean,
right?
It's
And so,
it's perfect.
the thing is that to write for Alice Cooper is like writing a Broadway show. He very, right at the beginning, he said, I'm Vincent Fournier. Alice Cooper was actually the name of my band, and then people started calling me Alice. And so I've created a character that I play. Alice, there are rules because he's very, spiritual, religious person. His father was a minister, and this dark creature that he created always has to pay the price. So if he chops off the head on the little doll, then he goes under the guillotine. There's always a retribution for every bad thing he does. And humanity always longs to see these villains and monsters and dark characters because that's the reptilian side of our own psyche. And it's a very kind of satisfying thing. So we don't have to be bad ourselves. He can be bad. And that's why entertainment works so beautifully because, we are always chasing hardwired archetypes. And today I was just seeing that, somebody's put a play together of Marilyn Monroe contrasted with Helen of Troy. And Ben Winshaw is in it, and, it's in New York. And it's like, there you have it. Helen of Troy and Marilyn Monroe are the same archetype. And we're hardwired to identify Venus, Helen of Troy, all these, kind of fertile beauties. And other people fall in line with that. And then you have Medusas, which, there have been so many, Thera Bara, then you have, somebody like Madonna or Lady Gaga. They even wear like snakes on their heads, because that kind of dangerous, woman is another archetype that we long for. And so I studied acting with a very deep, she's almost like a guru, Sandra Seacat. I mean, she is a guru to many of her students. And I started with her when I was in 1979. And I was not an actor. I was just a fly on the wall, and she just let me be in class with Jessica Lange and Christopher Reeves and Mickey Rourke and, Cicely Tyson. I mean, like so many, Michelle Pfeiffer. All these people were in little class in her living room in New York in this little apartment. And she talked a lot about these archetypes. And I've used all of that innately. When I size someone up to work with them, I kind of ask myself, what is their archetype? Because she always explained that the closer a person's being aligns themselves with an archetype, the more it's identifiable by the most amount of people, because it's hardwired inside of us. And so I think that, that's a key help for me, because it's like Alice Cooper, he plays the devil, the demon, other characters like, Ozzy Osbourne also fall into that archetype. We love those characters. It would be out of character for them to sing some sweet, nothing little fluff of a lyric. We don't want that from them. But we do accept it from, boy bands and things like that who are, pure and innocent. So once you start feeling, what the essence of an artist is, then you're going to draw on, like, what is the strongest thing for them to be saying at that moment for humanity at this time? Because when you write a song, you write it in the now. So there's always a piece of now in every song.
Oh, in fact, I was going to ask you about Bon Jovi, but that'll bring me to Kiss instead. Since you're trying to sort of understand who the artist is and you're writing in the now, you look at I Was Made for Loving You, and that was sort of the antithesis of what Kiss was up until that point. They were, the black leather and the smokes and the bombs and the burning guitars and the whole thing. And I Was Made for Loving You is certainly not deuce or strutter or something like that. Talk to me about that collaboration. How did they find you? Was it just because Desmond Child and Rouge were sort of around in the business and you were just sort of meeting each other at Studio 54, or was it,
No,
you know,
we could never get into Studio 54. I
right?
tried 2 times and standing in the line, and I just gave up. I never went back.
Couldn't get in, but how did you get? Because you take this really sort of Americana hard rock band and you change what they are by doing this disco song, if I can call it that. And where do you meet? Where do you meet Paul Stanley? Where do you get into contact with Vinnie Poncia? How does that
Well,
collaboration come together?
last year I was honored with the ASCAP Founders Award, and it was so exciting. First of all, they surprised me and had Alice Cooper and his full band open my segment, which was at the end of the show, playing Poison, and I just I was wowed. It was like, this is your life. And then Paul Stanley came up on stage and he said, the first time I saw Desmond Child was on a poster with these 3 gorgeous girls, Desmond Child and Rouge, and he was intrigued by our image and the androgyny, and so he went and started going around wherever we were playing, and he'd show up, and then we made friends. We were hanging backstage, and I didn't really know that much about Kiss. All I knew about was Peter Allen and Elton John and Joni Mitchell, Laura Nyro, Carole King, singer-songwriters, right? That's all I knew. And Kiss I thought that was for little kids, or something. And, he said, hey, why don't we try writing a song together? And I said, okay. And then I said, oh, but you have to write a song with me for our group. And so we wrote a song called The Fight. And then we wrote, I went to SIR, and they were rehearsing, and they took a break, and there was a big grand piano off to the side, and I sat down and started playing these chords that I had been fooling around with for a while, and this kind of dark, to me it was dark, tonight, it's like vampire-y. I'm going to give it all to you, in the darkness. That's what I want to do, whatever the lyrics are. And, it's, to me, it was very much the idea of they look like monsters. They look like vampires. Their faces were pale and blood dripping down the side. So they had that kind of demonic archetype. So, that's how that song started, with these big chords and, this kind of drama. It was like theater. And at the same time, I had bought at one of the first early drum machines, and I had started, trying to combine dance with rock and also storytelling. So if you listen to, I Was Made for Loving You, it has all of that going for it. It was at the very, this is before, 6 years before Prince or Madonna or George Michael or any, or longer, 8 years before, and, when you look at Livin on a Prayer, it's the same thing, the big chords, and then, heavy metal rock with kind of like a R&B, dun, 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 kind of like almost disco rhythm underneath, and then a story, like a singer-songwriter story. So those 3 elements were things that I had been playing with, ever since I was in college at NYU, and with my group Desmond Child and Rouge. We were trying to create a new style, and also adding Latin elements like congas and stuff like that, which actually were being used in disco. And so, but in my mind, because I'm Latin and I'm Cuban, I wasn't thinking of it that way. I was thinking of it, this is the music of the streets, of the West Side. And our opening song on our first album was called West Side Powwow. Same thing, big chords, the sounds of the jungle, of the concrete jungle, and trying to evoke dramatic images. And when you listen to Livin La Vida Loca and The Cup of Life, when I went back to Miami, I brought everything that I had learned from Kiss and Bon Jovi and Aerosmith in Ratt, these kind of stadium rock bands, I brought it to Latin music. And there was this kid that was looking to cross over into the American market. But I had seen videotape of him, of 1 million people showing up in central Buenos Aires, an aerial shot, to hear him play. And I said, oh my God, we have to make Latin music for a million people to sing along with. And that's how, I brought all of that to Latin music. And it was, Gloria Estefan, was like, and Emilio, they were the first, to bring this crossover sound of Latin to pop. And then, 15 years later, I helped to reignite the Latin music explosion, me and Draco Rosa, my collaborator, with Ricky Martin.
Yeah, and it was a terrific, not a reemergence, but the scene. All right, since because we're at 50 minutes, and I know that I can't keep you on here till 4 a.m. Let me ask you just.
If you're going to talk about me, you can.
Well, we're doing good so far, but
I hope I've been answering your questions. I seem to kind of like pivot off to strange directions.
It's okay. It's
because something makes me think about something else. You'd think I was stoned. I am not stoned.
No, in fact, I see it more. I see it more as the creative process, because from different songwriters and stuff, I see a lot of connections, and like, oh, this goes to that, and that goes to this, and it seems to be sort of I don't want to say the pattern, but that seems to be what songwriters that I've spoken to do. But let's talk about Gina Velvet, Maria Vidal. The inspiration of Living on a Prayer. She is the Gina. I unfortunately do not know who the Tommy is in the song.
Tommy is me. Because
okay.
When I brought the idea of these two characters, I said Johnny and Gina, because my real name is John Charles Barrett, and so I lived. Maria was my girlfriend for like 4 years, and we started Desmond Child And Rouge together. And, this is before I realized I was more gay than I was bi, so
right.
It was something like that. But we're still very close, and, she's the godmother of my kids. John Bon Jovi is one of the other godfathers.
Yes. That was in the movie, actually. Or was in the clip.
Yeah. And Maria, she worked in a little diner called Once Upon a Stove, where they had singing waiters and waitresses, and her stage name was Gina Velvet. And so that's where I got Gina, because she had dark hair and everything, and everybody thought, she's very, spunky and sexy, and everyone called her Gina for Gina Lollobrigida. So that's where Gina came from. And then when I suggested Johnny and Gina, John said, well, it can't be Johnny because it'll sound like I'm singing about myself. Okay, Tommy. It was like a sound alike. And that's where Tommy and Gina came from.
So talk to me about this song, because we just talked before about it had, I forget how many, 6 billion spins or whatever it was, but an incredible amount. You have also said publicly that it is sort of your pièce de résistance. It is sort of the one that you are proudest of. And I don't know if that's fair. I mean, that's how I understood it, right? This is the one, the Living on a Prayer.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a song that, it's more than a song.
Right.
I mean, it really is more than a song. And I remember one night that I was with John, and we were, all the kids were asleep, and we were having our wine, sipping wine, killing time. What is it? Sipping wine, killing time, trying to solve life's mysteries.
Uh-huh.
And, he raised his glass to me, and he said, we wrote a song that's not just a song. It means so much to so many people. And he looked at me and he said, thank you. Do you know how few artists have ever said thank you?
I wouldn't be surprised if it's probably just John at this point, because there seems to be, all right, write us a song, let's go sell a few records, and oh yeah, for the thank you. But okay, but what is it about that song that has resonated? Is it just the story of the two characters, and musically it doesn't really matter because I've heard John and I've even heard a version of you doing it on piano, and you can and it's still powerful regardless of how it's performed. Or was it just the
Well, I
music?
think
Or
it's the melody
right,
with the words, because it's a song of hope. So like the sad parts are down, and then there's kind of like a some hope. We got to hold on to what we got. Kind of like that. The kind of mechanics of this song kind of like pick up, and then it explodes into this joyous, hymnal of hope. And it has an amazing philosophy, because it says it doesn't make a difference if we make it or not. And in the go-go 80s, it did make a difference if you made it or not. If you didn't make it, you're a loser. And the song says, we're going to, for love, we'll give it a shot. And so that's all we can do as people. We can just do the very best that we can. And, as long as we stay positive and keep, going after the things that matter to us, taking care of our families, trying to make a better world, doing the best we can at our jobs. And it just keeps resonating. I mean, I remember getting a letter from a guy that said he was going to kill himself, and he pulls up, at the bridge, no one's around. He just jumps out of the car. He leaves the car on, radio on, and just right as he's getting ready to tip over to jump, Livin, Our Prayer comes on, and that was his favorite song. So he said, "Oh fuck, well, it's my favorite song. Okay, let that be the last song I ever hear." So he goes back in the car. By the time it got to the modulation, he drove home.
that's a great story. That's a great story.
A song like that, has given a lot of people hope to get through, with the letters we get, get through, illnesses or the loss of a loved one, and, that's the most you could possibly do, by writing a song.
I see that we're at an hour, and I'm getting a little punch drunk, so I'll ask a couple more questions, and maybe we can reconvene for a part two. One of the favorite things that you've done, other than Bon Jovi, other than Alice Cooper, it's so much, but you were part of an album called Humanity Hour One with the Scorpions. Songs like 321, Are You Ready to Rock, and all. Absolutely fantastic. What was it like working on that album? Because it came out in 2007. I think it's fair to say sort of past the Scorpions' heyday, and yet you're working on this album with Rudolph and with Klaus. Talk to me a little bit about that album and working with the Scorpions, because it really is, to me, a masterpiece of an album. There is not a song on there that I do not like.
Well, so many people told me not to do it. They said, the Scorpions are over. They're so like this and that. And, I always loved the Scorpions. And I said, no, I'm doing it. I'm going to do this. And I had gotten this inspiration, to do this kind of apocalyptic theme. So every song has to do with, kind of like a world where, robots take over, and that, somehow humanity, our one, like this is our one, like where we're at right now, from the beginning of, picking up the first club and starting the first fire to now, that's our one, to the atomic bomb. And so, it has like this, and it was so exciting to do it once we all agreed that we were going to do something like that, because before they were, writing, kind of songs like, about sex and, stuff like that, like just hot chicks and this and that. And of course, early on, they had, songs that I thought had more meaning, and touched people more. And before we started the record, I made Klaus go and take voice lessons, and he with Eric Vitro, who I went to college with, and he's like the voice coach to the stars. And I wanted him to sound like he did when he started out with pure voice. But I think a lot of the touring had made his voice very raspy. And I said, no, I'm not gonna make a record until you can sound pure, make pure tones. And it didn't take long. Within a few months, he was singing like the beginning. And I don't know if you noticed that how great his voice sounds on this record.
That album is perfect. It is absolutely perfect.
And my collaborator James Michael, I mean, he so we did this kind of song camp with Eric Bazillion and James Michael and the Scorpions, and we did it in Nashville. And we wrote all of those songs, all at every corner of the room. Like a song I didn't write, but that is my favorite. It's like, "We Were Born to Fly." It's like, I just love that song. And I think that it was kind of hard, getting their management. I don't know if they were with the same manager or any of that, but to understand what we were doing, because I also art directed the everything with Liam Carlson, and he created all those images of the female robots where you can see the insides, and I had them like in bunkers, and also I didn't want them dressed like with leopard shirts and chains and cowboy boots, and I said, no, you guys, let's make a record where you just dress like normal people, not in costumes, just like real artists. And I don't know if their fans like that or didn't like that. It wasn't really a successful commercial record, but I think that I brought out, things in them that, they wanted to be saying, and also something that maybe someday in time, like I always thought, maybe they could be the soundtrack of a futuristic movie, all those songs, because they're so built like that.
That would be incredibly cool. And there is a couple of other songs down there that are bonus tracks like Cold and stuff, which is such a great track. I mean, just unbelievably great. In fact, I look at your entire discography or songography, if we can say that. Everything's a hit. We're at an hour and 3, so let me finish.
Okay, can I just talk about one of my most favorite songs of all time that I've ever written?
Yes, absolutely. And I was going to ask you 2 other questions if that's okay, but go ahead. What's your favorite song that you've ever written?
Well, aside from Prayer and Weird, I wrote a song this year. I solely wrote it for Barbra Streisand. It's a song called Lady Liberty, and it's on her new album Walls. It's track 5. Just go right to track 5. Listen to my song. And I had been writing it in my head for weeks, and then I had my programmer sitting in one corner of my studio, and I was at the piano, and then whoosh, it all came out, and it was like giving birth. I mean, it was like it's a tribute to the Statue of Liberty. And she heard it, and it was a go. I had been submitting songs to her for 30 years and never got anywhere. This one had everything going for it, for her voice and everything. And I produced it, and it was producing her. And, we had a gorgeous, demo singer who sang it, and she liked the demo singer. Then she got into the song, and it was like, wow. The gravitas that she brought to the song, that she brings to the song, she made it come to life. And it's just like one of the most proudest things I've ever done.
Okay, now you're going to make me ask more questions, but let me ask you about that, because a lot of folks go, man, I would really love to write with Jim Vallance. I would really love to write with Holly Knight. I would really love to write with Desmond Child and all these great, great songwriters. But as a songwriter, is there, other than Barbara Streisand now, an artist out there you go, oh man, if I could just get, whatever, Mick Jagger and the Stones to do one of my songs, that do you still have that sort of like, 12 years old kind of like excitement of if I could just get, and if so, who would that be? Who's the one person that you would like to get, or one artist or group, or that you just would love them to just consider to write one of your songs, or record, I should say, one of your songs?
Like I love all these new artists, like Lady Gaga and Ariana Grande, who I worked with when she was in one of my workshops of my musical Cuba Libre, like when she was 16, and we've seen her grow up, and she's magnificent. And Sia is
Sia's great.
I mean, I'd love to work with her, and I love just, oh God, like Sam Smith. I love him. I love Troye Sivan, Dua Lipa. I mean, there's so many new, gorgeous, like incredible, fresh sounding artists.
Yep.
And to me, it's never about style. It's about message. So I can write in any style because I can help the person dive into the words and bring out their best selves. So that I can do forever. So I'm not quitting anytime soon.
I have to say, by the way, I saw Dua Lipa at a festival in Montreal called Osheaga. It was about 100,000 people, and I had never heard of her until then. I saw the performance up above, sort of in the corporate box or whatever, and the way the audience below just moved in waves, and the way she it was mesmerizing, and she really is magical. And that I don't mean to be, but that girl is going to have like a 50-year career. It was just spectacular. It really was.
I'm in love with her. I got to see her in person. She walked past me at the Clive Davis pre-Grammy party, and I didn't realize she was so tall. And she just walked past me, and I was like, oh, she's ethereal. I just absolutely love her.
Oh, real deal. Absolute real deal. And when you can have that effect on a guy like me who's an older rock dude, that's because there's a magic there. And it really is special.
Well, there's always some, like look at Lady Gaga. I mean, she's just doesn't ever stop, and she just keeps doing incredible things because she's a true artist. I mean, she plays, she writes, she sings, she's inspired, she gets it. And there'll always be somebody new that's born that has it. There aren't that many geniuses. We're inundated by a lot of music. A lot of it's very kind of brainless. A lot of it's generated by producers who aren't artists, and they just, get somebody famous maybe to sing on it with them or something. And, but, when somebody's a true artist, like Imogen Heap, who I got, to write with a long time ago. We wrote a song with Guy Zigsworth when she was still with him doing Frou Frou. It's like, oh. And the thing is that she taught me something. I thought, oh, well, I'm Mr., hits. And she really didn't even have a hit yet. I think her first Frou Frou record hadn't even come out. And, and we were writing a song, and I said, well, something about the night. And she says, I won't sing the word night. It's very naff. It's like, you won't sing the word night? No, it's overused. I will not sing the word night. And it's like, wow. And so then what she did come up with was so fresh. And it's like, you see? It's like I wasn't digging in hard enough or deep enough, or, I was like relying on my little bag of tricks, in my back pocket. And, ever since then, any session I ever I'm there and I drive people crazy. I said, okay, that's good, but let's keep digging underneath that line. And sure enough, like 2 or 3 passes through, all of a sudden something surfaces that's gold. And that's true creativity, and not settling. And that's why I really respect her. I mean, look at Sade's music; it never grows old, never grows old. I saw her at Staples Center like a few years ago, and it was like, wow, her show and the songs and her band and the feeling, it was majestic. And she's somebody I'd love to work with. Oh my God.
Oh, that would be great.
Oh my God, yeah.
That would be great. Now, we're at an hour 10, so I'm going to finish with this question. And no, it's not going to be about the Thong song, which is that was such a great song back in the day. No, but jokes aside, just quickly, Slippery When Wet comes out, massive success. New Jersey comes out, even bigger success. The band gets burnt out on the road. They make a documentary, Access All Areas, etc., about how it became. What was it like coming back with the band and writing for Keep the Faith? I had a feeling that they were sort of like over each other. It was exhausted. They were tired. What was the pressure like going into that and coming up with the song like Keep the Faith and I'll Sleep When I'm Dead and sort of relaunching the second side of the Bon Jovi career? Was there pressure, or was it like, we're just going to write a song? It's just a song. It's no big deal.
What year was that?
92.
Had Nirvana already come out?
Yes, in 91.
Okay, see, there was like before Nirvana and after Nirvana. And, it was like Elvis looking at the Beatles, on TV. It was like, holy shit, I'm over. It was like, music just changed. All of a sudden these grunge bands that had no skill, they were like art students that could play 3 chords, and they had, kind of cute faces and long hair, and they that would just fall in their, in front of their face. They called them shoegazers. They had 0 skills, but they kind of understood something raw, something different. And I think that, it was a kind of defining moment. So we all had to kind of look at what we were going to, how we were going to approach what we were doing. And, so I had fun, working on that record. But, I think a thing also happens is like, you can't all of a sudden change styles when your fans like you for what you do. So, there was some experimentation, going this way, going that way, to try to, kind of bring something fresh, something new. But in the end, it's like those initial songs that defined, that generation and, of course, are rediscovered, by every generation. Same thing with Alice Cooper singing I'm 18. He's like in his 70s, okay? He's singing I'm 18. It's like he's not going to sing I'm 80. But working on that record, I didn't feel that there was any problem. It was just like, come on, we're going to do this. We're going to kill again, and we're going to write some great songs. And there was this energy, because John is very optimistic, and Richie also has a very happy-go-lucky personality. And so I never felt that there was a problem. But for me, I started to see that, wow, so many bands fell away, and the bands that I worked with are still working because their songs were good. I didn't write Janie's Got a Gun. I didn't write Wanted Dead or Alive, or many songs that were hits that are fantastic, written by the bands I work with. But I feel like I helped, to keep, bringing in songs that are still in their show. And, if you have good songs, you can keep going. Like Tony Bennett, He has great songs to sing. So who doesn't want to go see Tony Bennett? But, if somebody doesn't have good songs, then they stop going. And the song is the thing. The song is the thing that stands the test of time.
Really does, and that's what keeps these bands going. And just real quick, Living on a Prayer, Big Songs, Big Life, co-written with David Ritz. Unless I'm mistaken, that's coming out soon, right?
No. Probably the first quarter of 2020. Because, there's still a lot. We still haven't we finished the book, but we still haven't found an editor. And we're still, kind of in the midst of it because, I'm still tweaking things and stuff. But, I'm planning on rolling it out, first quarter 2020. And I've been performing. I just got finished doing Lincoln Center's American Songbook with a full band. And last year I did, I did a show called Live at the Kate for PBS. It's a national show produced by Laura Savini, and that's going to be out in mid-June. So, and then I have my live album that I recorded at Studio 54 downstairs. I'm still not in Studio 54. It's called 54 Below, and Feinstein's 54 Below. And I did 3 nights there, and we've been combining those nights. And then I'm also going to be dropping new songs, fresh songs that no one's ever heard before with me as the artist. Plus, Desmond Child and Rouge. This is our 40th anniversary of the release of our first 2 albums, and BMG's re-releasing the remastered versions of those. And we're going to be dropping singles from Desmond Child and Rouge too. So the world hasn't heard the last of me yet.
Oh, that is great. And oh my God, I have so many questions. But were you okay being a songwriter, or were you a performer who just couldn't make it as a performer and then turned to songwriting, or did your career sort of end up the way you wanted? Because listen, we are not going to argue with your success. It is unbelievable. But were you a frustrated singer-songwriter who became a songwriter, or a very happy, smart songwriter and preferred being at home rather than on the road?
No, I'm a frustrated superstar. And the thing that happened was that some things happened after my group broke up. We even went on Saturday Night Live as the guest, and I lost my my confidence. Like some very difficult things that are in my book. And I joined some kind of new age cults that kind of sent me sideways. But all the while, I kept doing my day job, writing Livin on a Prayer and stuff like that with bands and figuring. And then I tried doing, when I met my husband and, I got my life together, I tried doing a record called Discipline. And the thing is that I wasn't really being myself on that record. I wanted success so bad that I was just kind of not. It's not a record that I love. I don't feel like it's me at all. I was trying to create something because I said, look at all these people I helped to make big stars. I'm going to sing songs like them. And I didn't take the time off to write something that was personal and truthful. So, I'm in a whole other place now. And then, life happened, and then I just kept working, and then we had our kids, and they're 17. They're going to be 17 soon. And, I just keep doing my day job. But, that's why I said, okay, when my kids, fly the coop, I'm going to fly the coop. I'm going to grab my husband. We're going to go all around the world, and I'm going to sing my heart out. And, hey, they don't know I'm not famous in China, but I bet a lot of those people over there know my music and don't even know who sang them originally. So if I go over there and, I'm going to be the ultimate cover band of original songs.
I would love to see that show in Montreal. Just to sit down and see you perform these songs would be spectacular. And I will say this, I know you said that you want to make a memory as a song that didn't get its due, but there's another one that you wrote with Bon Jovi, Army of One. It is spectacular. And Desmond, thank you so much for all your time today. As you can see, I could probably do another 2 hours, but thank you for giving me an hour
Thank
and
you
20
so
minutes.
much, Mitch.
Yes,
And
absolute pleasure.
when my book comes out, I'll come back and tell more.
Oh, I
Tell all
want to
the
read.
dirt.
Yeah, the dirt. Well, hey, Motley Crue, the dirt is that one. No, but I do want to read that book. I think it's going to be a compelling story, and we will discuss it at length. And hopefully there'll be some stories about how all these different songs were written, because there's too. I mean, I've never seen a songwriter have a Wikipedia page only for his songs. You know, as we say in Montreal, merci beaucoup. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Adios, people. Hi, Desmond. Bye.
Perfect. That was great. Thank you, everybody.
All right, darling. You're welcome, Bobby. Lovely to hear your voice.
I think he quit. I think he quit on us.